If you've hit or are hitting 55, you've likely started to think about retirement. And as such, with that round the corner, or possibly even here are 8 things you should really stop doing right now. And the first of those is to go ahead and stop taking your time for granted. It sounds cliche, but it really is important, as a lot of people don't really realise that at that age, you're not exactly got lots of abundance of time left. At this point, if you haven't already and you're starting to look at when you're going to retire, you're going to start thinking, oh, maybe I need to work a wee bit longer, a wee bit more, just to hit these goals that you might have in mind for the level of income that you need for your retirement. And obviously, that's perfectly fine. If you've got a certain level of living that you need to get to, then by all means go for it. But it is crucial to bear in mind that no matter how much money you save, you won't be able to buy any of that time working back. Not to mention, the longer you leave it, the longer the ravages of time will have to get your health. So while you might be able to have a certain level of living in your retirement, you might not be necessarily as healthy as you would want to be, or for as long as you'd want to be when you're at that level. Sadly for most people, it is an inverse relationship between health and wealth. Both are relatively exponential, but they're heading in different directions. Ultimately, you only have a short amount of time with your life, and an even shorter amount of time having a healthy life. And as such, make sure to make each minute of that life count. Now, don't get me wrong, this doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. Some people really do find real fulfillment in doing their job, and as such, they might not necessarily be in any rush to retire, as they really enjoy what they're doing day by day. But sadly, those people are in the minority, and the majority of people don't exactly have their soul fulfilled at their normal day-to-day job. And for those people, you really need to ask yourself, is it really worth the amount of time you're willing to spend, the amount of years that you're going to continue to work to get to a level of living that you think you need? Is that time sacrificed worth it? Or would maybe taking a little bit lower level of living, but obviously a longer time being retired, actually be the better course of action for you? A crucial thing to bear in mind with this though, is that you shouldn't just be asking what you're retiring from, but what you're retiring into. Knowing what you're retiring into is equally or arguably more important than what you're retiring from. As if you have no idea what you want to do, what purpose you're going to fill your life with after you retire, you're going to quickly find yourself incredibly bored at best, and if not, you might end up being worse. So yeah, be sure you know why you're retiring and what you plan to do in retirement, because otherwise you're probably just going to be floating about the house, bored out your mind, and just doing your partner's head in. The second thing to stop doing is to stop saving unnecessarily. This somewhat relates to the other point when it comes to, working for longer than you need to get to a certain pension pot maybe. Forcing yourself to work them extra couple years just because you want to hit an arbitrary savings number, just to be extra safe, could end up costing you those years in healthy living. And you won't be able to get them back no matter how much you save. Now, obviously that's easier said than done. It is true that if you do work them extra years and put more into your pensions and your savings, you will be more secure. You can't deny that. But what I see commonly about this is that the goal that you're reaching for isn't necessarily the one you initially set. You might have had an initial goal that you were aiming for, and now that you've hit it, you want to push that goalpost just a wee bit further along, and that's equaling a couple more years worth of work. Now, I can't say to your situation, and that might have been a warranted decision to do. But what I will say is that it's careful to consider that once you hit this new goal that you've pushed the goalpost to, what's to stop you from just pushing it forward again? You need to have a real idea of what you want to live to, and stick to your guns. Don't let yourself be scared out of enjoying your healthy years while they're still about. And this is why it's so important to have a solid plan in place for when you're coming up to retirement. As if you don't, and you're just kind of guessing it, then well, you'll be exactly that, guessing it. And you won't be held to a number that you know that you need to get to. And as such, you can continue to push them goalposts without any real realization on what you're doing. And also, just from a technical standpoint, working 2 or 3 more extra years before retiring isn't going to make that much of a massive difference when it comes to your savings in retirement in the long term. It's going to be the difference of a couple percent on a Monte Carlo situation. Realistically, if you're able to effectively budget when the markets might be down, you should be able to make up the difference. And you've really got to ask yourself, is them couple of percentage points of success rate really worth the 2 or 3 extra years you might find yourself working especially if it's at a job that you just really don't like. If you've already found yourself saving for decades and putting all that work in throughout your life, you shouldn't be delaying your reward any further than it has to be. Really go out and enjoy yourself when that time comes, as ultimately none of us really know what life has in store for us, and as such, delaying it, you only leave yourself open to a lot worse risks than the markets. The third thing to stop is compromising your health. I spoke about this in my previous video, so be sure to go check that out after this one to really understand the details why this point is so important. But it goes over how health is one of your most important assets that you have, arguably more so than any pension pot. And unfortunately, a lot of people end up forgetting that and putting it to the side. And then when they eventually do retire, they're hitting 65, 66, and well, diseases and disabilities take a hold, and then all that money that they've saved, they can't do anything with. This doesn't need to be anything crazy. You just need to be relatively fit, keeping yourself healthy and moving and active, and obviously buying the best food that's available to you at the time. Obviously, in the current economy, prices have definitely, well, they've not been going down, we'll say that, but doing the best that you can with that is going to pay off so much in the long run, more than any asset that you're going to invest in. Again, the return you'll get on investing in your health will outpace anything, more than inflation, more than your pension, more than your ISAs, all of that. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to be able to fully enjoy your retirement, to prioritize your own health. And that level of health, it's not something that's a very difficult thing to do. It's not like you need to be hitting the gym 6 times a week. And it's not like you even need to uninstall the McDonald's app or Uber Eats or anything like that. But it means just try and be smart about it. Try and make sure you're lifting weights maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And again, you don't need to be pushing PRs or anything like that. Just enough to get the muscles strained a wee bit of micro tears, all that type of stuff. And for your cardiovascular health, you don't need to be running marathons either. Just 30 minutes, an hour of elevating your heart rate. It could be anything. It could be just a jog or an elevated walk, swimming, anything, just to get the heart rate up and your breathing going. And again, you don't need to be passed out by the end of it, but just enough to get yourself sweating. And when you're out buying yourself food for the week, make sure you're trying to do the better options if you can, like, you know, your whole wheats, fresh meats, fruit, veg, all that stuff. Again, you don't need to be like Jamie Oliver or anything like that, but you should know what you should be trying to eat. So don't skimp out on it. It is really important in the long run, and the future self and your family and all that will thank you when you're able to be in a fit state 20 years down the line as a result. But I will say, don't think you need to cut out like takeaways and stuff like that. I'd be the last person to suggest something like that. But obviously maybe try and keep it down to like once a week, or if you can do better then great, or just keep it to special occasions like birthdays, anniversaries, stuff like that. Obviously we're only human, so still enjoy yourself. Now this is not just about your physical health, but your mental health as well is crucially important. If you're coming home from work every day super stressed out, and you're unable to get a good sleep as a result because it's been a late day, and then you're up again for a super early rise just to rinse and repeat week after week, that will take a strain on you, not just physically, but mentally. That will have some serious effects. Now, obviously, it's just going to happen sometimes, especially if you're in like higher power jobs or high stress industries, but do bear in mind that these things do take a toll. So if you're continuing to do that beyond the point that you need to, it's not exactly going to have a good effect on your health moving forward. That type of strain, putting yourself through it for decades, it'll be visible to not just you, but to everyone around you. And you've really got to ask yourself, is putting yourself through any more of that really necessary for what might be a couple more years of savings that ultimately aren't going to make or break your retirement? On that note, real quick, if you've been enjoying the video so far, be sure to drop a like. And if you can think of anything else that you think that people should be stopping about this age, be sure to comment down below what you think. And be sure to subscribe to the channel as well, to make sure that you don't miss out on any other videos that might be covering topics that you're interested in, whether that's retirement or other areas of finance. The fourth thing to stop doing does sound a bit wishy-washy admittedly, but you need to stop worrying. The world always seems to be full of horrible events and bad news, and it's all pushed down our throats through the news and social media. I understand why. We are a rather pessimistic race, and we're drawn to these types of headlines and emergencies is what gets us clicking on them. And unfortunately, this only encourages the cycle, as these websites, news outlets, they all see the higher amount of clicks and it only encourages them to continue to feed us these negative news stories, which just, well, can put a real bummer on the outlook of the world. I mean, you've probably noticed it yourself. If you look at any finance or political topic video on YouTube, the thumbnail, normally bright red text, fire everywhere, saying how the UK economy is over and we're all done in. Admittedly, I might have done that and probably will do it in the future, but yeah, it's important to bear that in mind. And you might think, what's a couple of bad headlines or exaggerated YouTube videos going to do? Like, it's not like it's going to have much of an impact. Maybe a wee bit of worry, but nothing major. But in reality, this can affect a lot of people, especially when it's compounded by countless stories after stories, headlines after headlines, all being negative. Maybe one or two wouldn't have much of an effect, but when it's day in, day out, that will creep up on you, even if you don't realise. And most importantly, this can have a serious negative impact on your financial goals if you let this racket affect your financial decisions. Ultimately, there's so many things in the field of finance and investments that we have zero control over. I mean, you've got stuff like inflation, tax changes, just the market returns in general. This stuff, ultimately we have no real control over what it's going to do. And the sooner you realise to stop trying to fight these negative waves and just block out the noise and just go with the current over the long term, the outlook on your finances and your goals will be so much better as a result. And as such, just focus on the stuff that you really can control. Big one's going to be your behaviour, your spending, your saving. Really have a look at how you're doing that. Next thing is maybe your portfolio allocation. Do a bit of research, find what you're comfortable with when it comes to whether you want it in equities or bonds. Maybe speak to a professional if you're really unsure. And then arguably most importantly is controlling your consumption of this news and clickbait headlines. Just bear in mind going into it that it might be a bit exaggerated on how bad it really is. Number 5 is to stop hanging around people who don't want better for themselves. This might seem rather inconsequential, but there's so many adages out there about you being the accumulation or the average of the people that you most hang around. The main difficulty of this isn't necessarily, people in your workplace that you're not exactly a fan of, as ultimately you can just kind of swerve them in the lunchroom, or when you retire you can just kind of cut them out and not need to deal with them at all. But the difficulty comes from when maybe the people are family members or friends that you've had a relationship with for a long time. And these will likely be people that you do care for and you do have an emotional investment into. And it's not just as simple as just blocking them on social media. If you're trying to be the best version of yourself that you can be, but the people that you hang around that you care about are constantly dismissing you, putting down your dreams, your ambitions, and just being a general sap on your energy, then it is really important to evaluate that relationship. Now, don't get me wrong, I would never say to just abandon a relationship on the first signs of these things or just on a whim. Everyone has their rough days and their down days, and it's important as friends and as family to support these people and to help them get through these times and hopefully get them back to their, more joyful, perky selves. And just from experience, this is normally best addressed just with a frank conversation about what's going on and how it's making you feel. And then having an open discussion with the person and understanding, not just putting us across what you feel, but hear what they have to say and understand where they're coming from and what they might be going through as well. So just do bear in mind moving forward to keep track of it. If the same people are requiring these conversations regularly over time, then you've got to really ask yourself, is it worth it? I like to think that most people will be helped by the conversations and they will want to get themselves back on track type of thing, or they'll be able to communicate their problems and you'll understand and you'll be able to move forward. But sadly, there are people out there that just don't want to be helped or don't see that what they're doing is a problem. And sadly, whether it might be difficult or not, these people might need to just be cut out for your own sake. Number 6 is to stop spending on things that don't reflect who you really are. A lot of people find themselves spending money on things simply out of routine and not necessarily as a reflection of who they actually are. At the age of 55, it really is as good a time as any to really evaluate and look at yourself and understand what you find valuable in your life and really focus on putting your money towards them types of things, whether it's experiences or interactions, anything like that, and maybe moving money away from stuff that you don't really see a real moral value in. That might sound a bit abstract, But for example, it might be you're taking money away from maybe spending money at the bar or the pub as often, and maybe redirecting it into experiences with your family, whether that's with your partner or your kids, or maybe it's to help fund your kids' education or businesses, anything like that. But obviously, that's just one example. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be, spending it on other people. It could be spending it on yourself and stuff that you've always valued, hobbies that you've always wanted to give a go, but you've never really thought that it's worthwhile doing, or charitable events or charitable donations that you've always wanted to make and help out, stuff that you've always been passionate about. Money that you're spending on things that just don't really bring you any value or joy is a much higher cost than the price of it. And the sooner you realise that, and that you're able to divert maybe some of that money at least into causes that you really care about, that really resonate with you on a deep level, you're going to find you're getting so much more value out of that than what you're actually paying for it. The real cost isn't just the money. It's the missed experiences that you've missed out on as a result of not putting money into it earlier. This one is a really easy one to avoid, but sadly a lot of people don't realise what they're missing out on until it's too late. The 7th thing to stop doing is to stop pretending to be someone that you're really not. Alright, I bet you're thinking after that one, I probably just ripped most of these off of a Tumblr post or something. Come to think of it, I'm not sure if the average viewer of this video will get that joke, but if there's a few people my age watching it, maybe that joke landed, or maybe it still didn't, it was pretty crap. But yeah, on that, this doesn't just apply to people who are at 55 or winding up for retirement. This is a piece of advice that's, well, it's broadcast everywhere. It's as cliche as it gets, but it really is true. The sooner you begin to live the life that you really want to, and not the life that you think other people want to, you'll really begin to understand what freedom means. This has become more important now than ever in the age of social media and all the vanity that's come along with it. You shouldn't be tailoring your life to a way that you think is going to maximize the amount of likes you're going to get on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. It should be what is making you happy and what you actually want to do with yourself. I do find this whole problem pretty funny, however, because ultimately when it comes to, your posts on your social media and such, no one cares. Like, when was the last time that you've followed someone that you're chomping at the bit to see what they're posting, and it makes your day to see what they're being up to? I can probably comfortably bet that there's never been something like that you've had to deal with. So you should only really play and do the life that you want to do to please yourself. Because when you put this stuff off on social media and stuff, no one cares. And the only person that's actually going to care throughout your entire life what you're up to is yourself. And to round it off, the last thing you really need to stop doing is living with regret. We all make mistakes all throughout our life, and there's going to be no bigger critic to yourself than, well, yourself. But these mistakes and regrets, they're just going to weigh down your soul. And so, as best as you can, it's important to try and just focus on what's coming and what's going on right now. You can't focus on what's coming if you're too busy looking behind you. If you really want to enjoy the now and control where you're going to end up, you just kind of need to leave what's in the past in the past. Obviously, just saying move on, it's easier said than done, but give it a go. Really try and sit down and reflect and understand that what's happened is happened and there's no change in it now. So focusing on what you do moving forward, you can control that. And as such, that's what you should focus on more than anything. And if you can manage to do that, at least a little bit, it's going to pay off for you in the long run. So give it a go. But yeah, that's everything I wanted to cover in the video. So if you've enjoyed it, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. And on that, if you want to understand why retiring at 65 is a terrible idea, be sure to watch this video here that I've made. And if not, I'll see you next time.